My late husband, Robert, used to say that you could tell the character of a man by looking at his hands. Robert's hands were a roadmap of his life. They were calloused from the hammer, scarred from stray nails, and stained with the varnish he used to lovingly coat every piece of wood he touched. He was a carpenter, not by trade in the beginning, but by soul. With those hands, he built our life. He built the small, sturdy home we raised our children in, and with what was left over, both in materials and in energy, he built our dream, a little house by the sea. It wasn't grand. It was 2 small bedrooms and a porch that faced the endless blue, built on a plot of land we'd bought with every spare penny we had for over a decade. He built it for me, for us, for the future. He said it was our legacy, a place where our family could always find its way back to what mattered. I lived a simple life, a good life. I worked for 30 years as a seamstress, mending the clothes of others, my own hands telling a quieter story of needles and thread. After Robert passed, that beach house became more than just a property. It was a sanctuary. It was the last, most complete piece of him I had left. The salt in the air felt like his embrace, the rhythmic crash of the waves like his steady heartbeat. I had 2 children, Sarah and Michael. Sarah was like her father, grounded and kind, with a heart as sturdy as the oak beams in our home. Michael was different. He was brilliant, ambitious, always reaching for a higher branch, a brighter star. I was proud of him, of course. He became a lawyer, the first in our family to get a university degree. He wore fine suits and spoke a language of contracts and clauses that was foreign to me. He married a woman named Jennifer Preston. Her family was what people call old money. They had summer homes, plural, and a way of speaking that was soft and cutting all at once. I tried to connect with them for Michael's sake. I would bake my honey cakes for their gatherings, and they would smile politely and place them on a silver tray where they remained, untouched, a humble brown island in a sea of delicate, pastel-colored macarons. Michael began to change, or maybe the part of him that was always there just grew larger. He started to talk about his humble beginnings as if it were a disease he had miraculously survived. He'd laugh it off, but his eyes never smiled. He was ashamed. Ashamed of the calloused hands that had built his world, ashamed of the simple, honest life that had launched him into his new orbit. Still, I loved him. A mother's love is a stubborn, resilient thing. I believed the beach house could be a bridge. I let him and his family use it every summer, hoping the simple quiet of the place would remind him of who he was, of where he came from. I pictured my grandchildren, Chloe and James, building sandcastles on the same shore where Michael had once dug for clams with his father. I imagined it tethering him to us, to our history. The breaking point came at a garden party at the Preston estate. It was their anniversary. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and roses that grew with an almost aggressive perfection. I felt small and out of place in my best dress, the one I had made myself. Michael stood up to give a toast, a crystal glass of champagne in his hand. He was charming, eloquent. He spoke of his love for Jennifer, of his gratitude for being welcomed into the Preston family. And then he said it. His eyes scanned the crowd, gleaming with a pride that cut through me like a shard of glass. And as a symbol of our future, he announced, his voice booming with false confidence, Jennifer and I have recently acquired a charming property on the coast. A new project for us, a place to build new memories. He smiled, a wide, empty smile, and everyone applauded. They applauded his success, his ambition. I felt the blood drain from my face. Acquired? The word was so cold, so transactional. Sarah, who was sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. She knew. Later, as people were mingling, Michael pulled me aside, a frantic energy behind his polished facade. "Mother, I was going to tell you," he whispered, not looking me in the eye. "It was a business decision. The old place, it's not practical. It's got foundation issues. The wiring is ancient. I got a fantastic offer from a developer. With the money, I'm buying a lot next to Jennifer's parents. It just makes more sense." I couldn't find my voice. The house he was dismissing as a teardown was the house his father had built with his own 2 hands, every joist and rafter placed with love. He had poured the foundation himself, a foundation not of concrete, but of dreams for his family. And Michael, my son, had sold it. He had sold his father's ghost. He had sold my heart for a better view and the approval of people who would never understand its true worth. He didn't just sell a house, he erased a history. He erased his father. He erased me. In that moment, standing on the perfectly manicured lawn of the Preston estate, I had never felt more invisible in my entire life. I was just a ghost from a past he was desperate to bury. I didn't say a word. I simply nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. I think my silence unnerved him more than any scream would have. He expected tears, arguments, a scene. I gave him nothing. I gave him a void, a reflection of the one he had just carved into my soul. I turned and walked away, found Sarah, and quietly asked her to take me home. The car ride was silent. The city lights blurred through my tears, tears I refused to shed in front of my son. Each streetlight that passed was like a snapshot of a memory from that house. Robert teaching a young Michael how to skip stones, the three of us huddled on the porch during a thunderstorm, the smell of pancakes on a Sunday morning. Memories he had just sold to the highest bidder. When I got back to my small apartment, the quiet was deafening. I sat in Robert's old armchair, the fabric worn smooth over the years. I felt a coldness spread through me that had nothing to do with the night air. It was the chilling realization that my son saw our life, our love, our sacrifices, as nothing more than a line item on a ledger. Something to be liquidated for a better asset. The pain was physical. It felt like a deep, internal bruise, a place I couldn't touch, but that ached with a profound, hollow throbbing. For a moment, I felt myself shrinking, becoming as insignificant as he had made me feel. Then, the phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice was gentle, wrapped in a blanket of concern. "Mom? Are you okay?" I couldn't speak, so I just made a small sound. "I heard what he said to you," she continued, her voice hardening with an anger she was holding back for my sake. "He had no right. Mom, he had no right. That house was yours." It was Dad's. Her words were a lifeline. They were the first anchor in a storm of confusion and grief. She saw me. She saw the truth. Her validation didn't erase the wound, but it stitched the edges together enough to stop the bleeding. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The initial shock began to subside, and in its place, something else began to form. It wasn't anger, not the hot, explosive kind. It was colder, heavier. It was resolve. It settled in my bones like steel. Robert had been a simple man, but he was not a fool. He had seen the hunger in Michael's eyes even when he was a boy. He worried about it. And in that quiet, dark apartment, I remembered a conversation we had, not long before he passed. A promise he had made me keep. I would not let my son erase his father. I would not let him bulldoze our legacy for the sake of appearances. My response would not be loud. It would not be emotional. It would be quiet, and it would be absolute. It would be rooted in the truth, a truth Michael had forgotten, or perhaps had never bothered to learn. I rose from the chair, the ache in my heart now fueling a strange, calm strength. I went to the old wooden chest where I kept our important papers, and I found what I was looking for. The next morning, I did not call Michael. I did not call the Prestons. I called Sarah and asked for the name of a lawyer she trusted, a man who had helped her with her will. I made an appointment for the following day. I walked into the lawyer's office, feeling a strange sense of peace. I wasn't a woman seeking revenge. I was a woman reclaiming a story. I sat across from Mr. Harris, a kind-looking man with gentle eyes, and I laid a single, folded document on his polished desk. It was the deed to the beach house. Mr. Harris looked it over, then looked at me over his spectacles. "It seems quite clear, Mrs. Miller. You are the sole owner of this property." I nodded. "My son," I began, my voice steady, "believes he is a co-owner. His father added his name to a previous version of the deed many years ago, for inheritance purposes. But Robert, he was a thoughtful man. He worried." I explained the situation, the supposed sale, my son's announcement, the developer. Then I pulled out a second document. It was a notarized letter signed by Robert just 6 months before he died. In it, He stated his clear and final wish, legally revoking any previous arrangements and bequeathing the property solely and entirely to me, his wife, Clara Miller. He had made me promise to keep it safe, to use it only if I ever truly needed to. He said a man who doesn't respect his own foundation can't be trusted to build on it, I told the lawyer. I think he knew this day might come. Mr. Harris read the letter, his expression unreadable. He tapped his pen on the desk. Your son has sold a property he has no legal right to sell. That is fraud, Mrs. Miller. The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. I felt no satisfaction, only a deep, profound sadness. I don't want to press charges, I said softly. I don't want to ruin him. I want the sale to stop. I want the house back. It's not for sale. And that was the decisive action. It was not a thunderous clap of revenge, but a quiet, irrefutable correction. Mr. Harris made the calls. One to the developer's legal team, one to the real estate agent, and finally, one to Michael's office. The power didn't shift with a shout. It shifted with the quiet, undeniable weight of the truth. The sale was void. The developer, facing a fraudulent contract and a legal nightmare, immediately pulled out. The grand project was dead. Michael, who had built a castle of ambition on a foundation of lies, suddenly found the ground had turned to sand beneath him. It took less than an hour for my phone to ring. I saw Michael's name on the screen, and I took a deep breath before answering. The voice on the other end was not the smooth, confident tone of the man who had given a toast the night before. It was a raw, strangled cry of fury. What did you do? He yelled, his voice cracking. What in God's name did you do? You've ruined everything. The Prestons, the developer, they think I'm a fool. They think I'm a criminal. There was no apology. There was no remorse. Only outrage. It was the desperate cry of a man whose carefully constructed image had just been shattered. He was furious not because he had wronged me, but because he had been caught. You embarrassed me, he shouted. How could you be so selfish? So spiteful? Did you do this just to hurt me? The accusations washed over me, but they couldn't penetrate the calm that had settled around my heart. The volcano of shame and anger burning inside him couldn't touch me anymore. I listened to his tirade, to his self-pity, to the way he twisted reality until he was the victim and I was the villain. He spoke of the money he had lost, the respect he had forfeited, the opportunity he had squandered. He spoke of everything except the truth. When he finally paused to take a breath, I spoke. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. The house was never yours to sell, Michael, I said simply. It was built with your father's love. You tried to trade that love for social standing. That is a price no one can afford. He started to sputter, to form another argument, another accusation. But I didn't wait to hear it. Some things are not for sale, Michael. Respect is one of them. So is the truth, and with that, I gently hung up the phone. I had drawn a boundary not of anger, but of dignity. The conversation was over. In the days that followed, a strange quiet descended. I didn't hear from Michael, but the story, it seemed, had traveled. One afternoon, I received a phone call from an unknown number. It was Harrison Preston, Jennifer's father. His voice was gruff, businesslike, but devoid of the condescension I was used to. Mrs. Miller, he began, I'm calling to apologize for my son-in-law's deplorable behavior. And for my own ignorance. A man's legacy is a serious thing. You did what you had to do. You have my respect. It was a short, clipped conversation, but it felt like a tectonic shift. He, a man who valued assets and acquisitions above all, understood. In his own way, he was validating my stand. Sarah, of course, was my rock, bringing over groceries and just sitting with me, her quiet presence a constant source of strength. With the house securely mine again, a new question arose. What now? The thought of selling it was abhorrent. The thought of letting it sit empty felt just as wrong. The house was built from love. Its purpose had to be to give love. I spoke with the pastor at my local church, and with Sarah's help, we developed a plan. We would turn the beach house into a retreat, a place we called Robert's Rest. It would be for families who couldn't afford a vacation, for other widows who needed the solace of the sea, for veterans needing a quiet place to heal. The house, which my son had tried to leverage for status, would now be a sanctuary for those who had none. The work gave me a new purpose. Sarah and her husband helped with the repairs. Neighbors from my old community came by to paint and garden. We filled the rooms with comfortable, donated furniture. In the entryway, I hung the most valuable thing of all. It wasn't a painting or an expensive mirror. It was the original plan for the house, which Robert had sketched on a stained paper napkin one evening at our kitchen table. It was framed now, a testament to a dream drawn on a scrap of paper and built into reality. It was the first thing people would see when they walked in. The root of the whole thing. I didn't hear from Michael directly, but news trickled back to me through Sarah. His life, once so shiny and promising, was beginning to tarnish. The failed deal had exposed his recklessness to the Prestons. They saw him now not as an ambitious go-getter, but as an impulsive, dishonest man. His marriage to Jennifer, which had been built on the flimsy scaffolding of his projected success, grew strained. Apparently, she had told him, "My father respects your mother more than he respects you right now." He lost a significant amount of money and, more importantly, he lost the one thing he craved most, the illusion of effortless success. About a year later, my doorbell rang. It was Michael. He looked diminished. His expensive suit hung on him as if it were a size too big. His face was pale, and the confident gleam in his eye had been replaced by a deep, weary exhaustion. He mumbled an apology, something about not thinking clearly, about the pressure he was under. It was an apology wrapped in a dozen excuses. He talked about his troubles, his financial strain, the tension with Jennifer. He was asking for help, for a solution, for me to somehow fix what he had broken. I listened patiently, without interruption. When he was finished, I didn't offer him money or hollow words of comfort. I simply went to my photo album and showed him the pictures from Robert's rest. A picture of a young single mother with her 2 children, smiling on the porch. A photo of an elderly veteran, sitting in a rocking chair, staring out at the ocean. A thank you card, written in a child's crayon, that said, "This was the best week of my life." "This is the house's value, Michael," I told him softly. "This is the legacy your father built." He stared at the photos, and for the first time, I saw not anger or pride, but a flicker of something raw and genuine. He left without another word. It was a long time before I heard from him again. Then, one evening, a letter arrived. It was a single sheet of paper, his handwriting unsteady. It was short, only 3 sentences. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. The house was Dad's legacy, and it was yours to protect. I was ashamed of where I came from, and I became a shameful man. There were no excuses. There were no requests. It was just the truth. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a beginning." His beginning. My own resolution had already come. My peace was no longer tied to his apology. I found it in the laughter of children on the beach, in the grateful letters I received, in the quiet hum of the house as it fulfilled its true purpose. I spent most of my time there now, acting as a quiet caretaker, a welcoming presence. I was no longer invisible. I was Clara, the woman who ran Robert's Rest. My identity was my own, built on the foundation of my own values. One afternoon, I was on the porch with Sarah's daughter, my granddaughter, Lucy. She was a thoughtful child, with Robert's kind eyes. She was tracing the lines on the framed napkin in the entryway with her little finger. She looked up at me, her expression serious. "Grandma," she said, "Mom told me what Uncle Michael tried to do. And what you did. You saved Grandpa's house." She paused, then wrapped her arms around my waist. "You're my hero." In that moment, any lingering shadow of the pain dissolved. That was the only validation I ever truly needed. The legacy hadn't been broken. It had been passed down, purer and stronger than before, to a generation that understood its worth. I looked out at the ocean, at the vast, unchanging horizon. Robert was right. You have to honor your foundation. A tree that is ashamed of its roots can never grow tall enough to reach the sun. It will spend its whole life in the shadows, fighting itself. My son was still in the shadows, but he had finally, I think, started to look for the light. As for me, I was at peace, living in the house that love built, finally and fully visible in the warm, bright sun.